Thank you very much for everybody. You know, in this Sunday early morning, very difficult, I know, in the UK, Sunday early morning. And also this room. It's totally far away. Yesterday I tried to find this room. I was lost. lost coming here, lost back. So, yeah. So anyway, thank you very much in this early morning here and to sitting in the room. And we share some personal experiences and my idea regarding for one of the extraordinary organ, or one extraordinary organ and extraordinary the vessel, we call the governor vessel. And the title is a governor vessel, it's the channel of the brain. I should call it brain meridian. Yeah, that's the title. And also I always to put my contact on my slides. So just make let you easier to communicate. As introduction, I'm a professor and a lecturer in many years and many countries. So I'm more than happy to be contacted with any further question regarding for the slides. You're welcome. The slides and any other questions regarding for any your difficult cases or any even further cooperations, such as teaching, etc. So you're more than welcome. So whatever my Facebook, my email, or even my mobile number. So you are more than welcome for the contact. And last minute. Okay, no worry. The last slide I will put it again. Yeah. Okay. So first, thank you very much for the Bexy invite me for this talk again after another 2-3 years. So let's slightly review my lectures history with Bexy. The first time I was invited by Bexy was there, 2013. That was something like an introduction about the TCM brain series. As you may know, the brain theory, brain is one of the extraordinary organs, are not so commonly practiced or understanding by the Western. So based on my research, particularly my PhD research, so I studied and researched and practiced about TCM brain theory. So that's the first time I introduced my knowledge on the Bexy conference. Something like introduction, they say title, The New Understanding of the Brain and the Clinical Application, something like introduction. Then 3 years later, I was invited the second time to introduce one of the unique technique for brain conditions, including neurological conditions and psychological conditions, which is scalp acupuncture. So that was 6 years ago. 3 years ago and 3 years later, after the first the introduction. So that was this was in Reading. I met some colleagues during this conference. It was in Reading. You can see this scalp acupuncture, etc. And that's it today. Today is after another 3 years. That is another special part of the brain theory, which is the DOMAP, or you can say governor vessel. So I will go detail for today. We'll focus on this talk. So today's very short talk, only 45 minutes. I try to concentrate all my knowledges. This topic should be at least 1 day. As you may know, I'm leading lots of CPT courses, some in the UK, some other European countries, even some other Asia countries. Most of them should be 1 day or 2 days. But today I try to squeeze them in just 45 minutes. How to try to share my knowledge. Such today, my topics, including the very briefly review about the TCM brain theory and particularly about the governor vessel, and the summary about the development of the brain theory and brain practice and clinical research on brain conditions. Then governor vessel with the brain, how to practice the governor vessel, DOMAP points on the brain-related disease, and very briefly introduce about the Dao Qi acupuncture technique on DOMAP. So these are topics, and today we will very briefly introduce. And this is a bit overall about the TCM theory, the development history. in basically, we say brain is one of the extraordinary organs. It's very, very few description and practice. So you may know most people are not so familiar with brain theory, and in most of our TCM textbooks only mention some sentence, oh, brain is one of the extraordinary organs, etc., but no any further study. But there are some statement in Huangdi Leijing. Yeah, I will go deep later. But very few study on the physiological pathology and identification. But from 1980s, or you can say later 1970s, there are lots of development, but particularly in China, unfortunately not so much introduced to Western countries. As you may know, most of textbooks in the UK or in the European countries were translated or published about 1990s or even earlier, such as Machiavelli or Peter Dedman. Their knowledge are classic TCM, that's fine, but some of the developing areas are not so much covered, not so much translated. So that's partly the reason why this couple of years I try to do something to fill in this gap on this area. So this is the overall about the TCM brain theory. So as we mentioned, originally, actually in TCM, in Huangdi Leijing time, there are some arguments about the brain. Even now, even China, still there are some traditional TCM or classic TCM are slightly concerning about if we highlight the importance of the brain, what's the role of the heart? Because of TCM, we all the heart is the king, it's the queen, it's the whole room. They cover everything. But if you highlight the brain, it could be a problem for the 5 elements cycle. So there are some argument. But if we go back to Huangdi Leijing, even that time there are some argument already. Such as the Huangdi asked the Qibo, I've heard different comments from different physicians. Some take the brain as the Zang organs, some take the Fu. So that moment has already different doctors, they have different understanding about the brain. So that's the translated from the chapter of Huangdi Leijing. They called chapter 11 one, different functions between 5 Zang. So in chapter 5 Zang, they have already mentioned about the brain, but because some argument. There's different translation of the Huangdi Leijing. As you know, Huangdi Leijing was written 2,000 years ago. Even for our Chinese people, to understand this ancient language, we need some translation. Translation from ancient Chinese to modern Chinese. But then, from modern Chinese translate to English, you can imagine how challenging. So although there are so many different translations based on my knowledge, each of them have some benefit, some advantages, but unfortunately there are some missing. Such as the most popular one is from the Unschuld from this one. He has a series of the books, including Huangdi Leijing, Su Wen, Huangdi Leijing, Ling Su, Lan Jing, etc., etc. The English is very good, very purple English, but the understanding of Chinese, there are some missing or some misunderstanding, etc. Yeah, and I'm on the way to writing my book. The name called "The Acupuncture for Brain," which is contract with the Springer. During this writing, I realized there are lots of problems. I read all these books, I compared their translation. It's true. There are lots of work we need to do. Yeah, hope for next year sometime I can publish the book. Then very briefly review the origin of the brain. The brain was one of the major important internal organs. Yeah, because of time, I do not go deeper. Just that at the beginning of life, first by essence, then develops into the brain. Our yin and yang connected, our parents connected, the essence first generated. After the essence, the first organ developed is brain. Then, after the brain developed, then others gradually generated. So that's the originally from Huangdi Leijing. And also there are some other statements mentioned as well, such as the head is where the spirit locates. Head is the spirit locates. And when prick the head, if the brain is hurt, the patient will be die immediately. If you read this chapter, they call the chapter the forbidden position in pricking. That means if we by mistake we prick in our heart, it will die in 1 day. If we hurt the liver, spleen, kidney, you will die in 3 days, 5 days, 7 days. But only the one organ, if you by mistake hurt, you will die immediately, which is brain. It's brain. And also, the Huang Di Ling Shu, chapter 33, the discourse of the sea. Brain is the sea of marrow. The sea of marrow. Then it transfers in upper region of the top of the skull and below the Feng Fu 216 opening. This is cited from the book. So today, the main topic I will mention here. The last conference, 2016, I discussed about the scalp acupuncture, which comes from here, the upper region of the top of the scalp. And then the lower part is the Feng Fu 216. Here, 216 is the major point of Dumai. That's the originally from. And therefore, his brain is considered to be the utmost important or the vital part of our life. So from Huang Di Ling time, there are already lots of statement, discussion about the brain. So the original words, the foundation of TCM brain theory, the key words from here, brain is the sea of marrow. Brain is the sea of marrow. Here, the marrow, there are 3 different meanings, very simply, including the brain marrow, which is in the scalp. Then the spinal marrow, which is inside the spinal cord. And then finally, the bone marrow. So marrow can be divided in 3 different parts and different levels. So the second word, it's transferred to the scalp. Here, the transfer to scalp, there are several meanings. First of all, there are lots of acupuncture points on our scalp. I summarized and researched above our, the brain scalp. There are in totally 40 points located on the scalp area, including Dumai, gallbladder channel, bladder channel, Sanjiao channel, etc., etc. There are 40. Most of them has the functions to treating head problems, brain problems, etc. Most of them. And we developed in the last 40, 50 years, some other doctors, particularly some doctors, they have some basically neurological diseases, or some of them, they are Western doctors. They are surgeons. The combination with the neurological, the knowledge with TCM knowledge, put them together. They stimulate the area on scalp according to the underneath the brain function zones. They create called scalp acupuncture. So that is one part of the brain theory called the brain. So 2016 I have already introduced. So this is the very brief scalp acupuncture. So that after that conference, in the last 4 years, I have already provided more than 30 different scalp acupuncture courses or seminars. The whole participants for my courses had already more than 1,500. They joined my course, or this kind of conference, or sometimes I provide some very small group workshops in my clinic, maximum 6. So next week you will be there. So this one is in my surgery. Roughly about every 2 months, I run a small course there, and a lot of other, like this conference, this AACP, this in different countries. This in Malaysia, about 150 participants for my seminar. So lots of countries. So I've already tried to introduce this knowledge and the technique for participants, for colleagues. For today, we are focused on here, below to the Feng Fu. Here, the Feng Fu, not only this area, Not only this Fengfu Do16 points, but also the brain. Also the brain related by the channel, the Dumai channel. Dumai, this area, Fengfu is Dumai, Dumai with the connection with the brain, and the Dumai treating the brain channels. So we slightly review about the Dumai channel. As you know, because Dumai is one of the extraordinary channels, not like the 12 regular channels. And also because Dumai located in the center of the spinal, connected to the brain. So not so popular used. Some practitioners, they are very, very rare to practice Dumai. Yeah. So let's slightly review about Dumai. So Dumai starts from the original word. If we directly translate from word, it said start from the uterus. You know, uterus for women. Where's our Dumai? Our gentlemen, do we have Dumai? Of course, we have Dumai. Yes. So I try to translate it from internal genitals. That's both equally female and male. Yeah. And downward to the external genitals, passes by the anus. So Dumai starts from private area. This area including the male problem, female problem, gynecological problems, fertility problems. So Dumai has the function to treating infertility, female problems, male problems. I use them a lot. And then Dumai upward from inside the coccyx and the sacrum, the whole spinal, inside the spinal. So from what you know, if we're treating any of the Dumai or spinal problems, but if some practitioners are, we say, they're worried about the damage or something, they only insert little half turn or 10, 15 millimeter. It's okay. You can treat some local problems. But for Dumai itself, it's not enough. So here, Dumai. Then Dumai enters and connects the brain from Do16 Fengfu. So this is from Huangdi Leijing. So from Huangdi Leijing time, they have already noticed that Dumai enters and connects with the brain. Our ancient masters, they have already realized the connection between Dumai and then the external part runs from the forehead to the nose and at the gum, so to the front. And of course, Dumai has 3 branches. These 3 branches has more widely connection with other Zangfu organs. So Dumai can play a widely role, not only for spinal, for brain, but other Zangfu, such as you can see kidney, you see the kidney from the umbilicus, heart, eye, etc., etc. So very widely connection. Let's summary some of the pathological changes of Dumai and the gallbladder vessel. There are lots of statements on TCM clexis. Yeah, so I summary here the pathological changes of Dumai, including first spinal disease. So any spinal disease directly connected to Dumai, and lower back pain, especially middle line of back pain. We know lower back pain, there are many, many different styles we can treat. It. But if the patient is suffering from in the middle, particularly the patient is very difficult to burn in front or back, then this is Dumai injury. We can choose Dumai points. I will suggest the first points we can choose to treating this kind of Dumai injury will be small intestine 3. We know this point to open Dumai. So very easy to insert, then after the patient move, immediately, just seconds, more than 50% of patients will immediately getting better. After we need to ask them move. We call it moving needling. This is the special point for Dumai. And other points, headache, neck pain, stroke, or other brain-related diseases. These are the Dumai conditions. Yeah. And including some of the gynecological male diseases as well. So after we review the Dumai distribution, we are more understanding now Dumai has these the conditions. So what is the channel for the brain? As we summarize it, we all know for the 12 regular channels, each of them has a channel to connect the zang and the fu, the external and the internal, and the upper and lower. So that's the reason why when we're suffering from eye problem, we use lever 3, because it's connected through the channels. But the question is here, on traditional TCM, when we study foundation of TCM, brain is just one of the extraordinary organs. They have no channel. How do we treat them? So after this review of the history, we know, oh, brain is so important. Brain has a channel we call domain. That's the reason we call this domain. So I believe government vessel is the channel of brain. I shortly call it is brain meridian. So the main reason here, first from the Huangdi Jing, we say the Gukong domain enters and connects the brain. Then later, about 100 years later, or 100 years later of Huangdi Jing, there's another classic book we call the Nanjing published. Nanjing with the name here. The Nanjing, when you translate it, is a classic of difficulties. So Nanjing most of the chapters are translation or explanation about the difficulty questions of Huangdi Jing. So Nanjing make it more detailed. So here Nanjing is a book name. You know, possibly you know my city is from Nanjing, exactly spelling, but the different sound. This is Nanjing. Here is the Nanjing. Nan means difficulty. The Nanjing. So classic of difficulty on chapter 29, 8, it says, domain enters and belongs to the brain. So make it more directly. Domain enters the brain and belongs to the brain. So this is very clear. So now I believe, and not only myself, and lots of more and more colleagues believe domain has a close relationship to the brain. So that is my, based on this review of classic TCM theory, of course we know this theory has published 2,000 years ago. But for clinical practice, it's also very, very effectively by myself and colleagues. But we need some evidence to prove. How to prove them? We need clinical studies. So nowadays, there are many, many clinical trials published in China. So the development TCM theory, particularly the new understanding of brain, government vessel, they are increasing application domain and for brain-related conditions. Increasing. Lots of new acupuncture theories has been developed. They mostly to use the translated English, dredging the government vessel and the regular shen, do regulating and the cerebral vessel unblocking, tong du tiao shen, etc. developed. So commonly use the brain, the domain points to treating brain-related diseases, including government vessel or domain 24 shen ting, 20 bai hui, 16 feng fu, 14 da zhui, and etc. etc. Yeah. And also due to the government vessel connected brain and heart work together to regulate brain, harmonize some and organs, nourish shen and regulate shen and waking the brain. So mostly using these points to treating shen-related diseases, emotion problems, and the brain-directed conditions such as stroke, this kind of the neurological diseases. Yeah, this is the more recently researched in the last 20, 30 years in China. Yeah, which partly of my PhD research 2005, 15 years ago, yeah, for acupuncture treating depression. So as you know, depression, traditionally we use the heart shen disorder, liver qi stagnation, etc., etc. Mostly we use these points as theory. During my research with my supervisors, we majority use the domain points. Domain 16, 14, 20, 24, and domain 3 and 4, etc. We treating depression and this kind of diseases. They are much better than traditional treatment, particularly for the severe severe major depression or clinical depression. They are not good response for our general treatment. Yeah. And I list some of these references if you are interested, but unfortunately most of them in Chinese. Some of them with English abstract. Yeah, that's the problem. The only one you can find in 4 English texts, the first one. Who is this guy? WTJ, Wang Tianjun, or you can say Tianjun Wang here. That's the only one you can find the published in 4 English. Yeah. On the journal, you can say acupuncture in medicine. This is quite high standard, the journal for acupuncture clinical study. Yeah. This one I used, you can find the most majority points I used to treating depression are Dumai points. And others you can find if you are interested. Yeah. You can see I highlight the name, dredging the governor vessel and regulation. And you can see here, yeah, do regulation and cerebral vessel unblocking. Regulator do meridian, and they should tone do 调整, etc. They use this technique, this theory to treating brain-related diseases. Yeah. Okay. And we have already moved on for the brain, the relating of the Shen. The brain has originally we say the head is the spread located, etc. But with we said Huang Liying is 2,000 years ago, but unfortunately some reason after Huang Liying in about 1,500 years, they are almost disappear, or very very few mentioned about the brain. I don't know why, but based on my knowledge, I research, I believe possibly because of the 5-element theory in China were occupied the highly standard of TCM theory. So this 5-element theory, it's a 5-element blocked. It's blocked. It's nothing else can put it in. They connect each other. We can't put something else inside. So brain has not lost its role, possibly, that's my understanding, until the 1950s, oh, sorry, 50s, 90s. The famous herbalist, we call it Li Shizhen. This book we call the if you study herb, you will know this is one of the famous book on herbalist, not only China, and worldwide. We call Li Shizhen. His book translated in many English. So in his book, he said, brain is the house of the yuan shen, or you can say use the word preliminary mind. But unfortunately, some reason in this book did not explain detail. Yeah, how to translate, how to practice, etc. Did not translate. Yeah, so we need our understanding and our explanation. Yeah. Ready? Yeah, how to understanding? So during the time, oh my, I'm running time. Yuan Shen is the source of all other Shen. Yuan Shen is the largest and the most honest Shen and dominant life. Yuan Shen is the innate and governed by brain. Yeah, make it very clear. We can find a little bit mentioned in the material of the book of his book, The Foundation of Chinese Medicine. He mentioned, he said, brain is resident of the original mind from the Ming Dynasty onward. Some doctors attribute the resident of the mind to brain rather than heart. So there's something mentioned of there. Okay. Based on the preview introduction, now we can summary the function of brain, including dominates the life, such as consciousness. If the consciousness problems, we mostly focus on the brain. And to operate the physical activities, including vision, hearing, the smelling, taste, sound, etc. These sense problems, now we can mostly focus the brain, and also to govern the mental activities, such as memory, sleep, intelligence, etc. These are the basic physiological functions of the brain. Yeah. The company used to do my points, I have mentioned previously. Yeah, if we have a one-day seminar workshop, then I will demonstrate these points, location, leading, etc. Hopefully in the future, yeah, if we have time. And sample books of the brain, as I mentioned, unfortunately, in the Western countries, now I did not find any textbook explaining about the brain, particularly the pattern of the brain. I highlight some of the key books, including the Diwali book, and some books from, even from the, one of the famous TCM book, Chinese Medicine, The Web That Has No Waiver. All these books, very, very few, even completely no mention about the brain in Western books. Yeah. And also I give a sample how to treat the brain conditions. For general TCM theory, when we're treating the Zhangfu organ problem, most of the time we according to their pattern. We use the pattern, such as a sample of the depression. I give a sample for the Diwali book. Diwali book, the Psyche of Chinese Medicine, the Shen, on this book. He lists this commonly seen pattern of depression. You can see I highlighted liver, heart, lung, spleen, kidney, and the phlegm, etc. Almost all involved. Nothing with Shen, nothing with brain. Yeah. All Zhangfu organs may be related for depression, but nothing on Shen, nothing on the depression. I highlight, because the Western the textbooks has no any study or summary about the brain patterns. So based on my research and some of the Chinese textbooks, I summarized and published in English. So look at the books. So I summary of the common clinical pattern of brain and its possible patterns. I summarize first stage is 5 patterns. First 2 are deficiency. Second 2 are excess, and then the blockage of the urgently. They are undeveloping. They are still new in the Western texts, yeah. Which is partly of my paper published in 2015 in June. A new understanding of the brain and its clinical application. If you are BEXI members, I believe you are all BEXI members. If you go back to find this in June, you can find my paper on this book. Yeah, this is the introduction of the brain theory based on my research. Yeah. And because of time, I very quickly list some of the pattern of this brain, including the first one, difficulty of the brain marrow, and suggest some points we can choose. Majority points are the Dumai points, and some other points may be related, such as kidney 3, gallbladder 39, etc. The techniques, we can choose local points, the electric points, and the Dao Qi technique as well. Second pattern is the deficiency of the brain Yang Qi. Yeah. And commonly seen symptoms, commonly used points, and the scalation of the brain collaterals. The commonly seen points, mostly seen on such as the stroke, Parkinson's disease, dementia, etc. Yeah, and these points and the techniques. Yeah. And the disorder of the brain Shen. Originally, most of the time we say the kidney Shen, heart Shen, liver Shen. And now we have the brain Shen. So the majority of the mental problems, such as anxiety, depression, bipolar, etc., these points. And with these points, the Dumai points, plus some of the other points as well. The last one, blockage of the brain orifice. So that patient has loss of their consciousness. It's in urgent cases. Yeah, points and leading, bleeding, etc. And based on my research in China and some of the research in the Western countries, in recent years, I published several papers on brain theory and practice, including the one I mentioned, I published on the acupuncture medicine, acupuncture treating for the depression. And also this one on acute. You are BEXI members. If you go back to the, let me see, acute, this one, acupuncture for stroke case study. 2015. If you go back to this book, you can find this case study, acupuncture treating for the brain stem patient with coma, 5 weeks. Very difficult to find. They found me, and I went to the hospital. Finally, I saved this guy with scalp acupuncture plus 2 map points, etc. And this is the Tianjun paper, a new understanding of brain and its clinical application. And this one is more newly about 2018. It developed some developed area of the brain theory. Yeah. Oh, and this one, I put this one here. Does anyone have read this paper? Yes, just the new issue of the Q. I put, can acupuncture treat stroke? If someone joined the synthesis this year, the March, the ARRC, we have a little bit discussion regarding for the acupuncture for stroke. Yeah, based on this discussion, I published this paper on Tianjun, on AQ, highlight acupuncture can treat stroke, but we need enough preparation, including our knowledge of TCM and knowledge of the neurological pathological changes. And also, we need enough knowledge of our technique, such as if your traditional acupuncture treatment is not enough. We need some unique technique, such as scalp acupuncture and 2 map points. So this is the paper I published. And as I mentioned, for brain treatment, one unique technique is scalp acupuncture. I have the speech in the conference 3 years ago. So today's speech, I will focus on what we call the Dao Qi technique. This is a special technique. This technique originally from Wang as well. First of all, also as a TCM, traditional acupuncturist, we all know for acupuncture technique, one of the unique area is De Qi sensation for TCM. Of course, there are some other techniques, they are not care about De Qi. But for traditional TCM, we need De Qi sensation. This from the Huanglejing Ling Su spirit pivot. They call it De Qi, De Qi sensation. And all later on Huanglejing Ling Su spirit pivot 34 chapter, the 5 disturbance, they said, when one inserts and pulls out of needle slowly, it is called Dao Qi. Dao Qi, this word is directly translated from Chinese. I tried to find a good word to English. There are some words similar to English, including guiding the qi, or leading the qi, etc., etc., but not the exact word. So I prefer to use the word here, Dao Qi. So the feat of the Huanglejing itself, they said, slowly and even. So how to make it? So after the De Qi sensation, we say what is De Qi sensation, etc. Yeah, and move the needle even and slow to guide the channel qi, And here it's also a shen involved. His shen, here shen, including the shen of the patient. The patient will be very, very calm down, concentrate. And also the shen of the practitioner. Ourselves would be very, thank you, 5 minutes, very, very carefully to practice the technique, very carefully. So shen involved. Yeah. And how to practice so the detail of shen, Dao Qi is applied light smooth stimulation with lifting, stretching, rotating needles. So the depth only 1 to 2 millimeters after the sensation. The ankle and the frequency, etc. This is the Dao Qi I practice for severe the bipolar patient. Yeah, this is the Dao Qi. And the indication, including the main function, is guiding the corrected qi to even and normal. Guiding qi. Traditionally, from Huanglejing, it used to treating 5 disturbance diseases. We call it Wu Duan. So now we translate to treating the chronic diseases, mental diseases, sensitive diseases, particularly when other techniques are not good response. If we use our traditional technique, not good treatment, we have another tool can help. Yeah, and also, as well, when I published this book, Acupuncture for Depression, some key factors in this the journal, I mentioned about the points, Duma points, and also technique. I mentioned it's a Dao Qi technique. But during the publish, the editors are not so happy for me to use this word. He said, I couldn't find any reference to find what is Dao Qi. On the other hand, I don't understand what I mean. So during this discussion, but finally I published. So this is the first published of Dao Qi technique on Western, English journals. So now, if you are interested in the study of Dao Qi, etc., you have reference now. Yeah. Okay. It's not okay. So this is the patient. She is also a Bexy member. She suffering from very severe depression. Tried lots of treatment by herself, by colleagues, by other doctors. Not good response. Very severe. So when she come to my clinic, said at first time I was feeling particularly heavy, like cloudy. I used the points do 16. Because she's a practitioner, she knew this is the points. She said, I felt the energy rise. Immediately I began to laugh. The heavy cloudy lifted. I felt the energy rise upwards to the top of my head and around the 220. So we call this is the Dao Qi, guiding the Qi to the head, to the brain. This is just a sample. So this is the position. I ask patient to sitting down with the forehead supported. Yeah, because of time, so do not make them more detail. Okay, and some feedback from the workshop, other workshops for the Dao Qi technique, etc. And the time, I know it's time already. I know. Then I think this is the last slide. I just list some of the commonly brain-related diseases which are suitable for scalp acupuncture or Dao Qi technique as a unique technique to treat it. Of course, this condition, we can use our traditional acupuncture points technique. It's fine. But for some of them are not good response for our traditional treatment, or some severe case, we can combine them, or we can think about to choose this technique, including scalp acupuncture and the Dao Qi technique for these conditions. And possibly not so common of these patients in our acupuncture clinic. I remember during the ARRC, some colleagues say, oh, I never treat any stroke patient in my clinic in my last 15 years practice. Yeah, it's true. But nowadays, after my study and introduce, there are many stroke patients come to my clinic. Most of them referred by colleagues. Last week, one patient referred from Southampton to my clinic. Each way, they travel 3 hours, twice a week. So we referred by colleagues. So lots of this condition, we can think about this technique. You see, I think the last minute, I finished the talk. So that is as well. I put all my contact is here. So you are more than welcome to contact, or you are welcome to join my seminars, workshops, etc. And another option, I think, one of our sponsor, the Herbal Primer, they have a standard there. They invite me to give some test experience. If any of you are interested, I can give you some test treatment of whatever scalp acupuncture or Dao Qi in the standard on the reception, I think the register area during the second break and the lunch break. If you are interested, you're welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you for the time. Okay. Thank you.